Hi, this is Sarah Mikesell with the Cattle Site, and today we're here with Brian Earnest. He is a livestock analyst with CoBank. Thanks for being with us today, Brian.
Thanks for having me, Sarah.
Very good. Let's talk a little bit about the cattle industry. Can you give us a little bit of an outlook for the next year coming ahead?
Yeah, I'd say we're generally positive in terms of looking at the outlook. There's a lot of optimism right now. You think about the consumer, the opportunity that they have for beef. They've done quite well with it in terms of what we're seeing from a market response here this year. Leading into 2022, there's a little bit of concern out there about higher grain prices and where that's going to impact things. And as we transition into the marketing year, will the stronger meat prices kind of deter some of that consumption that's grown in the last year? But overall, when you look at clearance, it's been relatively positive. And looking at the export market, there's quite a bit of optimism there with additional opportunity that's come into play in the last 2 years.
Right. And let's talk a little bit more about the export market, right? We know that we've heard a lot about China this year. So tell us a little bit about your thoughts on how exports are going to go this coming year and maybe into the future.
Yeah, and I do think you think about specific markets. China's been one of those that U.S. beef hasn't necessarily had strong interest in before. But in recent last year and a half, we've seen that export opportunity really grow. And it looks like it's going to hold on. That can maybe not necessarily be said for all the proteins that U.S. focuses on. The poultry industry regained access to China's markets in the last year and a half as a part of that Phase 1 trade agreement. And pork has kind of trailed off a little bit in terms of the export opportunity. A lot of that was tied to African swine fever and the really rapid decline in China's hog or swine herd, and that has rebounded significantly. I looked at the most recent numbers. They showed about an 18% rebound in China's swine population in the last year.
Wow.
So, that's a significant growth.
They're making progress, right?
Yeah. So overall, in terms of the opportunity for protein into China, it looks relatively robust. Other opportunity, it looks like Japan is still a major export destination for U.S. beef. Korea has grown in terms of an opportunity. But also Latin America has kind of popped up as a good key export destination for U.S. in the last couple of years too. So,
what do you think's driving that?
Somewhat, the travel industry had some difficulty in 2020, but it's rebounded there, and that appears to be some of the driver that's providing that opportunity for U.S. beef. So.
Very good. And it's kind of we've heard this as well, that kind of Latin American is kind of a bit of a surprise in some ways, the opportunities that are kind of popping up there. Is that, when we think about China, I guess we always think about the middle class growing, right? What's driving the Latin American market? Is it something similar or something different, do you think?
I think there's that plays in a part. You're also seeing diversification in terms of export opportunity. So that as it becomes more of a key destination, there's and proximity has something to do with it as well. It's, pork and poultry have long taken Mexico as a key destination for exports, and it's been a good partner overall for the other side of the business. So that does bode well, I think, looking forward.
Very good. And kind of circling back to the U.S. market, do you feel like profitability is going to continue for producers? We were just in with watching the Cattle Facts event that was just going on here, and they seem quite optimistic about profitability for producers.
Yeah, it's been a difficult 24 months thinking about the producer aspect of it, but the processing sector has seen some strong challenges related to COVID, but also plant fire, some cybersecurity issues that popped up last year. So there's not without its challenges in terms of working through the peak of what the cattle supply situation is. When we move into 2022 and kind of throughout the year, it does look like we're set for a shrinking cattle supply in the U.S. and processors appear to be caught up with, and are relatively current with what's in the feedlots. So overall, that spells some optimism in terms of the returns that the cattle feeder is going to see in 2022. So some of that dollar that's being spent at the retail space looks like it will start to transition back into the cattle market here. Probably primarily when we get into the grilling season and
Right.
we see another shift in demand there.
And we've heard out of the Biden administration recently that they're making some funds available, right, for to grow that packer, processor industry, kind of with small to medium size packing plants. There'll be some dollars available. How do you think that might impact the market?
Well, I think if you look at the long-term trend, over the last 20 years, we've seen the packer community actually shrink.
Right.
And so there's opportunity right now, given the processing constraints, that we could add back some more capacity there. Over the next couple of years, I mentioned we're going to see a decrease in cattle supply here. That kind of coincides with the need for additional processing capacity. I look at the Saturday kills, and it's been evident that we are pressuring what these
Right.
processing plants can push through. So it's at a good time when I think there's actually some strong profitability in the packing community. So that has the opportunity to bode well for the industry overall.
Yeah, especially with this opportunity, it sounds like some of these small to medium-sized opportunities would be across the country, not just in some traditional areas that we've seen. So
yeah, and you look at and traditionally you think about 30, 40 years ago, there were a lot of like niche processors or
Right.
smaller packers. If you look at social media, some of the things that are out there, it does show that there's an attraction from the consumer to go back to some of these niche processors. And from the analysts that I hear, that does look like it's an opportunity. There's different marketing channels that are being utilized now. So direct ship to home
Right.
of some of this beef that has its own marketing cue behind it, or its own characteristics that folks look towards or gravitate
Right.
towards. A branded program will do well in that sort of an environment. So,
very good. Well, thanks so much for all the information today, Brian.
thank you for having me.
This is Sarah Mikesell with the Cattle Site.